You're welcome, and good afternoon. I hope everyone can benefit from my experience with the express processing. We've gone through quite a few trial and error periods of different tissue types. We found some things that work better than others. We found methods, so we've tried different methods, but we have been very successful with all tissue types, processing them with the express, with the rapid tissue processor. Um, at first, we were very reluctant about, breast, fatty specimens, and of course, we're regulated on fixation times with our breasts, so it was kind of difficult to process those anyway. Okay, this is one of my favorite quotes because in order to be successful in changing the whole way that you've learned from the time you started doing histotechnology, change is necessary. The people that I work with, I have some that have been very resistant, some that embraced it, but overall it has been such a success. I think that everyone is very happy with the way things have turned out in our lab. Our turnaround times are better. We have very little downtime. I mean, it's very difficult when you have large batches of specimens coming in the morning, ready for you to embed or cut, and then most of the day you're just waiting for other things to do, frozen to come in or special stains. But we turned our deficiency at our lab into an efficiency. And I am here to tell you, you can teach an old dog new tricks. I was not reluctant to try it. I mean, I've always been a tweaker. I like to try new things, but this was just so foreign to me in the beginning that I just, I thought, well, I just don't know how this is going to work. But it did. And Sakura taught this old dog a new trick. Okay, our fixation, of course, is 10% buffered formalin. It is a universal fixative, and it has been standardized over the years. Just about every test that we send out, every test that we do in-house, everything is required to be fixed with neutral buffered formalin, or you'll have to do a lot of validation studies. So we switched from what we used for many years, which was zinc formalin. We switched to 10% neutral buffered formalin for that reason, to eliminate the need to validate every new test that we send out or that we do in-house. Okay, tissue processing has always been the same. Remove the water, infiltrate with embedding media, prepare for microtomy, and then stain. Okay, our processing pretty much has been standardized with the Sakura, with rapid tissue processing. What we're doing, you're using the same process, only you're not doing it with the xylenes and the hazardous chemicals that have to be monitored and discarded. And what Sakura has done, they have standardized a method for the very first time in tissue processing. Cut it the same thickness, processed the same way every time. I mean, there's no variation in the staining process, in the processing process, and everything turns out the same on a day-to-day basis, repeatable results. Okay, conventional processing, of course, it took so much longer to do that. I mean, 8 to 12 hours. Sometimes we do biopsies in 2 to 2.5 hours. But the Xpress 150, we can have specimens coming off every 40 to 45 minutes all throughout the day. And the best part about that is you don't run it overnight. This processor runs during the hours that you're at work, which is a good thing. You don't have to worry about the processor breaking down in the middle of the night and then you having to redo everything when you come in, delaying patient care. It runs while you're there. If there's a problem, it will tell you what the problem is and give you enough time to fix it. And that is another plus with the Xpress 50. Okay, of course, conventional processing took anywhere from 8 to 15 hours, required more reagents. There were larger batches of specimens. Sometimes required 2 shifts. In our facility, we're a 550-bed facility, and it did require 2 shifts because, they were so adamant about the turnaround times. They wanted everything, the next day out. Have everything to do in the morning, and you don't have time for anything else. Everything else has to be delayed. And more often than not, and usually it was the next day sign-out. All right, the conventional processing was good. There are some things we still process, conventionally. Any breasts that come in late, breast biopsies, we'll go ahead and cut them in and put them on the VIP to come off first thing in the morning. And that way they'll be allowed the minimum fixation time that's required for her too. Okay, rapid tissue processing. Okay, with the Xpress, we took what took 8 to 12 hours now has become 1.5 to 2 hour processing time. There are fewer reagents required for it. Smaller batches of specimens can come off every 45 minutes. And all this, like I said earlier, can be completed on one shift, which has worked wonderfully for us. We lost some people to retirement. Another person quit because she got tired of commuting every day for an hour, and which nobody could blame her. She was took a job 15 minutes away from her home. So it left 2 of us to do the work of what 4.5 people used to do. And if we weren't able to process with the Xpress, I mean, we would be working day and night split shifts, never have time for our home. It would have been a mess. We got this tissue processing system in just in the nick of time. So all of our work now can be completed on one shift. It doesn't delay other tasks. Get through with one run. Go start special stains that have been ordered, and we all have, I mean, all of our specimens now have the same day sign out capability. Right now, we're running 70 to 80% same day, but that is not same day sign out. We do same day turnaround as far as our specimens are concerned, but we can't tell the pathologist when to sign them out. But for the most part, they do very well. But our turnaround time as far as the work completion is 70 to 80%. Okay, this is the Xpress 50. It's compact in size. You see it doesn't take up a lot of room, and this has been a lifesaver for DCH pathology. Okay, when we first entertained thoughts of rapid tissue processing, when we were looking at the Xpress, okay, one of the biggest fears was burned tissue. Okay, another fear was you're processing every tissue type together, something's going to be underprocessed or something's going to be overprocessed. That's what we saw often in conventional processing. We'd run different tissue types together. In order to fully process and infiltrate some of those tissue types, others would have to be overprocessed. And sometimes the ones that we tried adequately would be underprocessed, needing maybe a little bit more time. Maybe it was cut a little bit thicker than it should have been. But these were the fears that we encountered when we were entertaining thoughts of purchasing this. But what we found and what I saw, the biggest fear of all was change. And that is an obstacle in every institution you ever want to go to. I mean, that you've ever worked at or that I have ever worked at. In every walk of life, people are so resistant to change. If not for change, we'd still be processing tissue on the old Autotechnicon that would get hung up in the middle of the night, and we'd come in, dried out tissues, and do everything we could to make those tissues salvageable, those tissue sections. And it was a nightmare sometimes. Not for change, we would still be back in those days, or even worse than that, hand processing. So now that we have rapid tissue processing, it goes with the territory. Change is necessary for technology in order to improve healthcare. Okay, we found out it was impossible to burn tissue. We were having some problems early on. We've had a few trial and error sessions to go through until we perfected our processing. And so Sakura technical people were right there with us along the way. But there was an artifact that the pathologists were seeing from time to time, and they called it burned tissue. The tissue is burned. Well, it's impossible to burn the tissue. What this was a case of mistaken identity. And what we found this to be is water trapped inside the tissue. Okay, there are several things that can cause this. Okay, one thing that we did see in the grocery room, going from one solution to the next, instead of draining or tapping the little basket or whatever, they were just grabbing those cassettes with their hands and just sloshing them with the formalin into the pre-processing solution. So a lot of the water was being contaminated, those solutions were being contaminated with water, therefore it carried over into the processing. So that was one thing that we had to correct. Okay, the tissue's not burned. Like I said, it was water trapped inside the tissue. All right, let's compare. And this is why it is virtually impossible to burn tissue on the Xpress rapid tissue processor. All right, the comparison is to an easy bake oven. I may not be right in my wattage, but I think it's 100 watts versus 60 watts in the Xpress. You're more prone to burn tissue in an easy bake oven that is child friendly than you are in the Xpress tissue processor. Okay, probable causes that we found, like I've already talked about some, probable causes of the water getting inside the tissue. All right, the biggest culprit of all is standardizing the gross dissection. We talked about the contamination going from one solution into the next. Okay, the tools that are used are precision tools. You can cut 1.5 to 2 millimeter sections every time you cut grossly. One of the problems we ran into was, okay, I'm getting comfortable here cutting these sections in. I'm really getting good at cutting, but as the blade gets duller or as you get a little bit more tired during the day, those sections might be getting a little bit thicker. So one thing that we did have to do, we did have to standardize the thickness of the sections, because if they were too thick to process, some of that water in those tissue sections has to go somewhere, and usually in the solutions, then therefore goes into other tissue and then causes this processing artifact. Okay, water in rapid tissue processing is our enemy. We need to eliminate the water, and that is the cause of that artifact. Okay, the prevention of water artifact starts with good housekeeping. Standardize the way you do things every time. If you're holding these sections in a basket, make sure they're drained well, tap them on the side of the sink or whatever before you transfer from one solution to the next. That's very important, and keeping those solutions changed and clean, that's another that we found. You're saying, well, I was just trying to conserve the solutions. I know they're expensive. This is what our grocery assistant said. I said, do not do that. I mean, if they're dirty, change them. If the formula's dirty, change them. So, she got used to doing that, and, things went well for the grocery room. Okay, standardization in the grocery room. All right, what we talked about was cut sections to standardized thickness, change the pre-processing solutions frequently, and allow sections to remain in pre-processing solutions the correct amount of time. Cutting sections to the standardized thickness. This is very important in rapid tissue processing. Our PA made a commitment with us when we did decide to purchase this system. He knew that would be a change for him, how he cut those sections in, and he knew that the biggest change was going to be through him, and the biggest commitment had to come from him because he had to change the way he did things. These are our processing reagents. This is what we use on the machine. Okay, I don't have a comparison picture for the old VIP, but that I think there's like 16 little stations for reagents. We've got formalin, alcohols, xylene, and formalin, alcohols, and xylene. And these are the only two reagents. One is paraffin, and the other is processing reagent. And these are the only two solutions you use on the processor. So it takes a lot less time. It takes about 5 minutes to change it out. Okay, changing reagents as required. I'm not sure the number, but I think it's something 600 to 800 tissue cassettes can run through there without it being changed. I may be wrong. What we do, we just change it every other day on the third day. And that way, if we get used to it, you just got into a system doing that instead of trying to keep up with how many cassettes go through there. But in the software with the Xpress, you can keep up with the tissue sections. You program that in, how many cassettes are in the basket as you load it, and it will keep up with it for you. But, we forget to program in how many and then forget to count how many cassettes are in the basket and then wait till they come out and get the final count on them. So we just decided it was better just to change it on the third day. But whatever works in your situation. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is microtomy. Okay, I found this picture of an antiquated microtome on eBay, and here it is compared to our new microtomes. But I don't know of anybody that ever cut on one of those things. It's from the 1800s. I don't know if any ever carried over into the 20th century or not. But I just thought we have come a long way. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about microtomy artifacts. What this tissue section looks like is maybe not processed well. It looks like, from the pathologist standpoint, it looks like it may not have processed well. Recuts were ordered on it or reprocessed, whatever the situation called for. I recut this block. Okay, this is the second block. And the second section, and then the third section. So you see, the further you go into the tissue, it is not a processing problem. It is water added to the tissue section as it's being cut on the microtome. Because I thought, well, this is puzzling, and then the deeper I got into that block, the less water I was running into. So I know that I learned many years ago sectioning your blocks, spacing them in, and then putting them in on ice and water. That helped those that were overprocessed and over-dehydrated. We had no control over processing and dehydration in conventional processing. The chemical and heat process with rapid tissue processing controls the dehydration and the infiltration. We run breast biopsies and GI biopsies on the same processing run in the same basket, and both of them process well. But what we found this was happening is sectioning these blocks, facing them in, and then putting them on ice water. Okay, just enough water has been removed from the tissue. Therefore, all you have to do is put it on your microtome and cut your sections. It is that simple because of the processing is so superior to conventional processing. All right, and this is the result. The one on the right is the result of sectioning blocks chilled but not faced in and put on water. Okay, most techs, just like me, learned microtomy by facing in and placing the blocks on the water. Okay, and as I said, it was necessary in most cases for conventional processing. Conventional processing more often has always processed and removed too much water. And, we had to put, little gauze. I remember putting little gauze up against those little biopsies. They would be so friable and so difficult to section. But even from the biopsies to the breast, if they're cut the right thickness, and they can be processed together. All right, difficult tissue types. Okay, most of the ones I can remember being difficult, and I really have to go back because everything cuts so well now, and I've only had this processor since October. But everything cuts so well, I have to really think back. Okay, breast, that was difficult if not processed well. Colon was difficult if not processed well. Thyroid, curettings, or bloody specimens, and then the biopsies when they were overprocessed. We really have to take special care with those. All right, the key elements here are the pre-processing techniques. This must be standardized to meet the needs of, the individual laboratory. The Sakura technical staff, when they came in to help us, they stayed right there while we did all the validation studies and everything we needed to do to get up and running. And, they were just wonderful. It was just a very, very easy transition, going from the conventional processing to this. Okay, with biopsy. Okay, they were easily over-dehydrated, difficult to section without adding moisture, and we most often saw a cracking artifact. But with rapid tissue processing, with the Sakura Xpress, never over-dehydrated, section was possible without adding moisture, and we get smooth sections without any cracks. The only time it ever happens, and I saw one recently, and it surprised me. I said, we haven't seen this in a while, and then it dawned on me. I said, well, I don't blame the Xpress because this is the only biopsy like that. The technician in endoscopy obviously put this on a gauze and forgot about it for a little while, and it over-dehydrated that way. Okay, curettings. I remember soaking curettings in ice water for 15, 20, 30 minutes. They were so difficult to section, and once you did get a section, it was difficult to keep that tissue section intact. This was the first specimen type that really caught my attention after we switched over to the Xpress. They were no longer dry and friable. They didn't require any rehydration. Didn't have to add any moisture. The bloody specimens, they just, sectioned just perfectly. The tissue stays on the slide, and that was I called another one of the techs. I said, have you got any curettings yet, or have you got anything, ECCs? And she says, no, I haven't. I said, wait till you cut that. We were just amazed because everybody dreaded cutting those things. Okay, what we do in pre-processing for the bloody curettings, we do 15 to 30 minutes in pre-processing solution. That's following the initial fixation, and then we hold it in the molecular fixative until it's processed. All right. Okay, thyroid. Okay, everybody knows how dry and glassy thyroid can be. Always required rehydration in order to section. It would shred. Everything. It was very, very difficult. You really had to work hard to get a decent section of thyroid at the microtome. Just as the biopsies and the curettings, there's very little, if any, rehydration required. Section is much easier. The shredding has disappeared, and the tissue remains intact on slide. Now, there's sometimes when we do silver stains, sometimes, tissue starts to wave and come up off the slide, but never in the H&E. Okay, and what we do with these tissue types, our pre-processing is 30 minutes in the pre-processing solution following the our initial fixation, or we can go 60 minutes in pre-processing fixative. All right, a lot of times, often in where I work, often when these specimens are taken from the operating room pickup station and brought directly over here, we gross 4 times a day. So sometimes these specimens are not fully formalin fixed, but the pre-processing fixative is a formalin tight fixative mixture. And if we hold after they're cut in, if he can cut them thin enough, and they can be held for 60 minutes in the pre-processing fixative, that helps the fixation time. And then after fixation, after everything else is ready to process, they can be held in molecular fixative until processing. Okay, colon. Underlying fat was our enemy in colon. It was so difficult to fix and so difficult to process. It had to be processed a long time. It had to be fixed for a long time. Cut those things open, clean them out, and thin them out, pull them out, or stretch them out as well as you could to even get decent section. And they were still difficult to section in microtomy unless they were processed overnight. But now, with the Xpress, we have found we can go from the gross board after fixation. Now, following the formalin fixation, we can go from the grossing board to the embedding center in 2.5 hours. Our sectioning is much easier because fat's processed much better than with conventional processing. It's just amazing, to think, going from a gross board to the embedding center in 2.5 hours. And then cut on a microtome, say 3 to 4 hours from gross, you're signing out colon. Okay, what we do in colon is a 30 to 60 minute in pre-processing solution, and following fixation, formalin fixation, or 60 minutes in the pre-processing fixative. And then, of course, we hold everything in the molecular fixative until processed. Breast. Difficult to remove the water and infiltrate because of the fat content. Section was very difficult at the microtome because of poorly processed tissue. Most often, we'd have to run a separate processing run to process breast well without compromising other tissue. Well, with the Xpress, the rapid tissue processor, it processes fat well. After our regulated formalin fixation time, slides can be on the pathologist's desk in 3 to 3.5 hours from gross. And we do have to fix a minimum of 6 hours. But what our pathologists do, as soon as they're excised in the operating room, they go ahead, the breast biopsies that are not the core biopsies, they will go ahead and slice them up somewhat so that they can fix, and then we can go ahead and run them after 6-hour fixation. What we do with our breast, the pre-processing, is 30 to 60 minutes following the required fixation time, and it can be held in the molecular fixative until processed. But our pre-processing fixative is eliminated because of our breast fixation requirements, our regulations on breast fixation. The difference it has made is just, I saw what happened in our facility. We went from 4.5 techs down to 2 techs, and we could not have done it. If we had to depend on conventional tissue processing, we would not have been able to make it. Both of us would be running screening. But the tissue sections, the specimen types that we were in fear of, we had our trials and errors, and we pretty much standardized the way we do everything, and everything except breast biopsies or fixation regulations do go on the Xpress processor during the day. And like I said, we have a 70 to 80% same-day turnaround in histology. We can't speak for the pathologists. It's up to them when they want to sign them out. But a lot of them they do during same-day turnaround. All right, I'm a little bit early. I think instead of 45 minutes, we've been 30 minutes. But if anybody would like to ask any questions.
Thank you, Phyllis. We do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
The first one is from Terry Williams, and she says that they work in a derm lab and find the need to soak the blocks with wet gauze or on ice to get our sections. Plus, we cut them at 3 microns, but we do not soak on water for a long time.
Okay, skin, I should have covered some about it. I have found the big wide excisions from those down to the little tiny skin biopsies that are sectioned. We can process them together. I mean, there's no need to add any moisture at all whatsoever. And it amazed me, when I first started doing this. I've gotten used to it, but I'm just, in the beginning I just shook my head. I said, we're doing colon, we're doing GI biopsies, we're doing skins, and not having to reintroduce moisture into them in order to get sections at the microtome. And it's amazing to me. It's just a wonderful standardization tool that we can do everything the same way, and it has been it's made our life very easy as far as microtomy. It has made our life very easy.
Thank you. The second question is the cost of the instrument, which I can give list price for the instruments, but you can definitely talk to your local area sales managers for better pricing, or if you have any special pricing. List cost for the X50 is $120,000, and they want to just know your operating cost, Phyllis.
Our operating cost is probably, I don't even know, and I don't even. My director would probably have those answers because he is the money man. I'm really the technical person, and I know I probably heard those numbers, but our operating costs nowhere near what they were when we had 4.5 techs. I mean, we have 3 techs now, and with the processing, and this system is not designed to eliminate positions. We had 2 retirees, and then we had another person that left, for good reason. And it did come down to 2 people. Now we're back up to 3 techs. We're still short 1 tech, 1.5 techs, but I don't know that we're going to be able to find anybody. But in saying this, after we got the tissue processor, losing the techs, it was pretty much paid for itself as far as the turnaround time. And, now that we've got 3 techs, eliminating the overtime that it was taking to operate, from, we start at 6:30 in the morning, and the last tech leaves at 6:30, and then we've got 1 in between. And, that's when, it takes about 12 hours a day to process all of our tissues and have them the same day. But it has paid for itself. I've only had it less than a year, but I can guarantee it has paid for itself.
Thank you. The next question is, how long was the initial validation process for the tissue? You then had to validate IHC also, correct?
We had to, all right, Sakura, the technical people from Sakura stayed with us 2 to 3 days. We were making little GI biopsies out of colons and, running tissues that we had already, processed, previously, and doing side-by-sides. What we found, there was something about the nuclear detail in the beginning, and we tweaked that, and, other than that, there was no significant difference in, from validating from one system to the next. When we were validating the IHCs, I thought in the beginning I would probably having to decrease incubation times, but that was not the case. Everything just ran smoothly. It was very easy transition. I couldn't have asked for anything easier. I was expecting to be pulling my hair out for weeks, but it took us about 2 weeks to complete the validation process. But Sakura stayed with us during the H&E process while we were validating. It took around 3 to 4 days, I think.
Thank you. Next question is, what do you advise to chill the blocks for cutting?
We do chill them on ice. We just do not face them in and put them back on that ice to get moisture in there. But we do chill the blocks. Now, we have 1 tech that she can cut them at room temperature and cut beautiful sections. I can't. They've got to be chilled. But I do still put them on ice. We just don't let the moisture get in there.
And this is a question for the in regards to the PA. Good for the commitment. Did he or she have any adjustment issues?
Absolutely. The thickness of the section is very important in this processing. And any variation of that, can cause water to go back into the process. So he knew, our PA, when we were making this decision to buy this processor, we went on site visits and we included him because we knew the biggest change was going to be him, the way he cut sections in. Everyone is taught to cut no thicker than a nickel, but does anyone really do it routinely? Often not. Some things are more difficult, and like I said, the more you're sitting there grossing or standing there grossing, cutting sections in, the knife will get duller and inadvertently cause a thicker section. But with the sectioning tools, it's impossible to cut sections more thicker than what they should be. But he knew that he was going to have to make a commitment. And sometimes when he does not use the tools to cut with and thinks, okay, I'm doing good and I'm cutting them thin, and then there might be that one or two thicker sections because he just didn't get it quite right, and it might not process well. But he knew, he was ready, he made this commitment with us. We knew that the biggest change and the biggest commitment would have to come from him. So we included him in the process.
Thank you. Going back to microtomy, is free spray acceptable for chilling a block?
Yes, free spray is fine. One of our techs uses the free spray when she does need the one that cuts at room temperature, but she does use the spray when she feels like the need to chill one. It's just the unfaced blocks on ice, block of ice is fine, but facing them in and leaving them on there for any period of time, putting water back in there, it causes some problems. And that eliminates a step of microtomy. We always had to do that, face them in, put them on the ice, so you're double handling them. So our microtomy has become more efficient. The way we do things is more efficient. We're eliminating a step there.
And how do you dispose of your solutions?
We dispose of them down the drain with water. There are no regulations as far as we know, for like the formalin. There's no formalin in these solutions. There's alcohols. We're not regulated here in Alabama to with alcohol. We can pour alcohol down the drain. So some of these solutions are, just pretty much alcohol based. But right now in Alabama, we have no regulations on them.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, do you use all Sakura products for processing, including paraffin?
Yes, the processing solutions, yes. Those are Sakura. They're trade secrets. I don't know what the solutions are, but I'm just amazed at the results we get with them. And if they never tell me what's in them, it's okay. But I just know that we're not regulated as far as our what we have to do to dispose of.
Okay. The next question is, what is your daily workload like? Who loads the processor?
Okay, our gross assistant who works with the PA, she loads the processor. We have a capacity for each run, each basket of up to 40 cassettes. But what we do, every time 20 to 25 or 25 to 30 cassettes, that makes it a more even distribution of the workload. Say if I'm on frozens, okay, I've got to have time to do frozens, whatever, and then, I'm not going to be stuck with 40 blocks, and then the next run that comes out for the next tech is going to be 10 to 15. And what we all do with these runs, we embed them ourselves. I've got two fairly inexperienced, with not a lot of experience, that are working with me right now, and I think it's important for them, especially the biopsies, to go ahead and embed everything that they're going to cut so that they can understand that depth of that biopsy when they're doing their levels. But yes, our grossing assistant that assists the PA, she loads the processor every day. And, every time she has 20, 25 to 30.
Thank you. The next question is the software user-friendly and easy to use?
Absolutely. It's touch screen. You can do, like I said earlier, you can do anything. I think, is it 600 to 800 blocks that you can run without changing the solutions?
Yes.
Do you know, Alicia?
Yes, it's up to 800 blocks.
At 800 blocks. You can program, every run that you load on the machine, and it's simple. All you do is open the door. If you have a green light on the load button, you open the door, put the little basket in there, and it reads it and screens it. But the software is all a touch screen. It is a very small touch screen. It's just simple ABC. And there are a lot of things, like I said, you could set it up to do, like tell it the number of cassettes are in each basket as you load it, and then it will keep up with the number, so that it will tell you exactly when you need to change the processor. But what we don't want to do is change the processor in the middle of a workday if we hit 800. So that's why we just do every third day, and then we keep up with our numbers. And if we go more than that by the third day, then we'll change it sooner than that. But yes, it is very user-friendly, touchscreen software.
So the next question is, you do not have to be a histotech to load the processor?
No, you don't. We have a grossing assistant that assists the PA, and that's her job. She loads the processor. She starts it in the morning. Well, no, we have it programmed. It starts, but the solution that's loaded, the molecular fixative, there is a holding solution. She puts that on in the morning. So, no, you do not have to be licensed or registered to add the tissue to the machine.
Would you like to explain the two different programs, the standard program and the extended program, so that there's no variation in between the two? Like you have a standard program, you have an extended program, whereas a traditional processor, there's more chance of error because there's multiple programs to choose from.
Right. Okay. We run the standard. When Sakura came in to help us validate and get everything going, we standardized everything to the standard processing. It's 1.5 hours, I think. But the extended process, if like late in the day, if like sometimes when we hold additional fixation, requiring additional fixation, we will go ahead and run it on the extended program, like breasts and colons. Sometimes when we just we have a lot of those. But one cannot run at the same time another one is, so there really is no room for error.
We experience homogenization of nuclear detail smudging, best I can describe, thinking it was due to poor dehydration or heat artifact. Do you ever experience this when validating to determine then how critical the soaking issue of blocks was? Because we now are thinking that we saw might have been due to the soaking of the blocks too long in the ice and not a processing issue.
It could be both. I mean, we found it to be, both sides of the coin. All right, what we found. But I think in the processing, I think it's just the water carryover, the thickness of the sections has a lot to do with that. I mean, if those sections are too thick, like what we found one day, when our PA was out, pathologists cutting sections in, and which they're not used to cutting the gross. Some of the sections were thicker, and we started seeing some of this in smaller sections, some of the smudging artifact. And what we attributed that to, we just changed the processor the night before, and I said, this is not a processing issue. I kept going over it and over it in mind, and I talked to the pathologist that, we sat down, we kind of brainstormed. I said, what's happening here? I said, when you've got tissue sections that are too thick, sometimes I think this is putting water back into the solution as well. Because we cleaned up in the gross room, we changed those out frequently, we changed the processing solutions frequently on the processor, like we're supposed to. But I'm thinking now, and when those sections are thick, that water has to go somewhere, and it gets trapped in other sections. It contaminates. Does that answer your question? Hopefully.
The next question is there more of a chance of tissue shrinking in the block with the method of tissue processing?
I have not found that to be the case. Now, we've had it since October. There are times that we have to go back and pull older cases, and, I have not noticed any. Sometimes there are those that are around for a long time, second opinions, and, I had to go and pull a case yesterday that was about 4 months old to send out for a consult, and send out for a second opinion or something, or somebody who knew was going to another doctor somewhere else. But those things were about 6 months old, and I did not notice any shrinking in those yesterday. I mean, that was from 6 months ago. But we've had it less than a year, and nothing I've seen so far has caused any problems as far as our archival blocks.
Thank you, Phyllis. If anybody has any other questions at this point, I would like for you to go ahead and get those answered. So if you could type them into the questions box, and we can ask Phyllis the question now. Once again, Phyllis.
I'll talk some about the. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Facing in of the blocks. I mean, that's something. That's one thing I'm going through with one of the techs here, because that's how she was taught to cut. Okay. One of the technical people from Sakura came and talked to her about it and explained to her also. But, she still continues to do this. I don't know. I think it's just a habit we're having a hard time breaking her. She said, I just can't cut them without doing that. I said, okay, face one in, turn it down, face the other one in, then go back and cut that one. If it takes doing that, But it's, leaving them in that water too long, and I've done recuts behind her, and I've brought this to her attention, and I've showed her, time and time again, this is what you're doing. You're putting water back in. But, the processing, if there's contamination in the processing solutions and water going back into the section at the water bay, at the microtome, it's a two-sided coin. It's just, having to figure out which culprit did it on that particular day.
Phyllis, the next question is, what type of paraffin do you use?
Okay, the paraffin, the infiltrating paraffin is different. We use a different infiltrating paraffin. Our processing kit is what it's called, is the dehydration solution and then the infiltration solution. And they're made by Sakura. But now in our embedding paraffin, we use a different type. It's Richard Allen or something. I can't remember exactly which type it is, but they're compatible. What
solution does the tissue end up in when the processor is finished? Is it paraffin?
It's the paraffin. And it will stay in the paraffin and it'll alarm until somebody comes and takes it off the machine.
What does the processing basket look like?
Okay.
What does the processing basket look like? Do we organize them after processing? What is the cassette capacity?
Okay, the cassette capacity is 40 cassettes in the basket. The basket's a cylinder, open cylinder with a little top and a little connection, a little handle that you attach to it. And like I said, it's 40 cassette capacity, easy to use. It's like a cup. It's about like a 20-ounce cup standing up.
We do actually have two different types. We have the random basket, which Phyllis just described, and then we also have magazines that hold a capacity of 20 cassettes each, and 2 magazines can be processed at one time. So you can get up to 40 cassettes going through the tissue processor at any given time. And that's more for an organized fashion, or it's used to be it's meant to be compatible with the AutoTC automated embedding system.
I forgot about I forgot about those, and I want to get some of those. I try to embed in order. When you've got 20 to 30 cassettes, and it's not that difficult to put them in order, but it would be nice to have them in order when you're embedding them, and I forget about those things. Thank you, Alicia.
No problem. Is there any other questions from the audience at this time? Well, I hope you all did enjoy these presentations. Oh, we do have one. How much fixation is done off the processor before loading on the basket?
100%. On most things. Now, there are some things we will let slide through without being fully fixed in formalin, and we will use the pre-processing fixative for those things. So, the routines, the non-diagnostic tissue types. We will cheat on those from time to time, but for the most part, everything is fixed either before it's cut in or after it's cut in formalin before it's processed.
Well, once again, Phyllis, thank you for your time this morning. We truly appreciate it. The presentation was amazing. Just to let the whole audience know that
I had fun.
Thank you. Your CEU credits will be issued 1 to 2 weeks after today. So we have already got started on them, so you will be expecting them. And again, they will be coming from Nancy Clemming here at Sakura. Our next webinar, again, is September 16th, 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. If you haven't already done so, please sign up on our website, sakura.com. On the lower left-hand corner, there's a place for webinars. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Ms. Phyllis.